This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
You are listening to The Express. And Mr. Gary, are you there?
Yes, I am.
How are you, Gary?
Uh-oh.
Hello, Gary.
He's not... It sounds like he might be having tech issues.
Aha. I'm a magnet for tech issues, I think.
Well, you guys are going to get all the time we can give you, so we're just going to try to do this. This is almost like This is almost like, reality TV or something. I don't know.
It's almost like live TV back in the days of Sid Caesar when things would go wrong and you just have to vamp and make it up as you go along. And, that's the beauty of radio. You don't get a second take. It's either happening or it's not happening. And I think we're doing that right now.
That's true.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say, for those of you out there that want to get a hold of me, you can go to Facebook at Gary Allen, A-L-A-N. You can go to YouTube.com and hear all my past shows at Gary Allen, The Express Interviews. This program, I think, will repeat itself on Thursday night at 7 p.m. on DiversityBroadcastNetwork.com, as well as on ProgressiveVoices.com. And if you're into the TuneIn.com, go to put TMV Cafe as your favorites, and we will get going. Our guest for tonight is Mr. Eric Streit, who's been a reality television producer for well over 20 years. His work includes on the Animal Planet Gator Boys, Snake Men of the Appalachian, Tank. For TLC has produced 189 episodes of Little People, Big World, which I caught a little bit of just earlier tonight, as well as the critically acclaimed DUI and intervention for the A&E Network, as well as Mall Cops. He also worked for Dr. Phil for a very short period of time. Absolutely one of my dearest friends in the whole world, Mr. Eric Streit. Eric, welcome to The Express as it is at the moment.
Great to be here on The Express, Gary, and it's very fitting that tonight would be the night that your radio gets kind of the tech issues come up, because that's very real, and I work in reality television, so I apologize if it was my juju that made this happen.
No, nothing like that. I don't know exactly what happened, but I'll find out a little bit later on. Eric is also the author of a new reality book out there. It's called Reality 101. It's reality shows, how you get into them, how you manage to get a sizzle reel in front of someone like Eric. And if you can get a sizzle reel in front of Eric and he really believes in you, he's one of the few people in Hollywood who can actually make it happen for you. We're going to get into a lot of that as we move along here with the program as to how you get in front of Eric and how you keep things going. But first, I want to just, for those of you out there to think that everything is lollipops and roses in Hollywood, it is not. Eric, for a long period of time, I know, like me, when I first got to L.A., you were either living in a car or living on a rooftop in a tent.
Yeah, that's true. That's all very true.
And I tell the story. I tell the story about Jay Leno has his star on the Walk of Fame right where he was arrested twice for vagrancy. And the truth is, folks, and I'm going to let Eric speak on this here in just a little bit, that when you first get to Hollywood, if you don't have it together, you're going to be living on the streets, or if you can find a 9-to-5 job to sustain you and pay the rents, although the rents are considerably different than when I lived out there. Although from what Eric told me yesterday, the dump that I used to live on La Brea and Franklin is still there. But Eric, just briefly, when you got to Hollywood, you did everything under the sun to get yourself acclimated to show business and get yourself in. And I mean, you did things for nothing.
Absolutely. I think everyone has to. I joined the Navy when I was 17 years old, and when I got out of the Navy, I went to Florida for almost 4 years, and I worked as an extra. I worked, as a production assistant. My goal was to learn as much as I could and make all of my mistakes in Florida, where rent was cheap and there were no stakes, really, because if you're an extra that screws up in Thunder in Paradise or Sequest VSC, no one's going to remember you when you get out to Hollywood. And I ended up, the way I made it to Hollywood is I was the host and MC of a Wild West stunt show that toured the country. And then I joined the carnival and became Balthazar the Monkey Boy, and dressed in a monkey suit. And for $1 a person, people would come in and I would pretend to be Balthazar the Monkey Boy, half man, half beast, from the jungles of the Amazon, brought here to you, good people. And for $1, you may gaze upon the eighth wonder of the world, Balthazar. And when we were touring across the country, when we were about 80 miles from Los Angeles at a fairground in Palmdale, California, I saw that sign on the road that said Hollywood 80 miles. And I said, I'll get out here. And I hitchhiked to Hollywood and didn't know a soul. I had less than $1,200 and signed up for a temp agency and went to work.
Yeah. And through that temp agency, you got a break on television, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I ended up getting a job transcribing a hidden camera show, doing the transcription and copying the scripts for the director. And then I brought the scripts over one day, and it was right when digital things were starting to take over. And the teleprompters used to be hand typed, and you would run the teleprompter by hand with a taped script, but they had just started using teleprompters that had floppy disks, and it had to be connected to a computer. But the guy that knew how to operate it had a car accident, and there was no one there that knew how to actually operate the computer-driven teleprompter other than to be able to type on it. And because when I was in the Navy, I learned to type 105 words a minute, I sat down with the script, and I was never more than one paragraph ahead, and they were shooting it in real time. And after that, the director congratulated me, and I became his executive assistant and worked my way up. And his father-in-law happened to be the legendary executive producer, Fred Weintraub, who was the executive producer of Woodstock and Enter the Dragon. And so fate kind of smiled on me that day in more ways than one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do a little fast forward for the moment. How did you get involved in reality television? And explain to everybody out there where the name reality came from. It's explained in your book, Reality 101, but explain where the reality aspect of it is. And it really isn't reality. It's more scripted than people think.
It's a hybrid. I refer to reality theater kind of as improvisational community theater, but with cameras. And reality television kind of occurred or sprung from, suddenly digital technology. You had these small cameras that people could use, that were getting as good an image as these $100,000 cameras. And so producers like Fred Weintraub, producers like Dick Clark started hiring young guys like me to go out and shoot these little pieces for $2,500 or $3,000. Of course, they would charge the network $10,000 or $20,000 and keep the change. And then they figured out, hey, we can do more than just funny man on the street segments. We can do full shows. And of course, the one that everyone remembers is the Osbournes. They put the Osbournes on MTV, and of course, the Real World was the one that started it all. But on the Real World, you still had those bulky, 50-pound cameras. But once I believe it was the Canon XL1 came out, this was a camera weighed 3.5 pounds that had, just an amazing image. And suddenly, what used to cost, a minimum of $25,000 a day, now you had a $2,500 camera, and a kid you were paying $100 a day, and to run the camera, and another $100 a day for the guy to direct the show. I mean, when you imagine the economics go from $25,000 a day to $200 a day, people are going to start experimenting and say, hey, we can do this. We can make a show. And, the first thing that happened were you saw a resurgence of these recreations of, top secret missions of the CIA, and you'd recreate the Bay of Pigs invasion because you had these tiny cameras and it could look amazingly real. And then people started, doing little segments, and suddenly, someone came up with the idea on MTV of following the Osbournes, and that's really kind of when it was born. And, back in the old days, when it was so cheap, on Little People Big World, it really was a true documentary follow Fox do, but then, as things evolve and budgets shrink and salaries rise, you can't just sit around and wait for magic to happen. Every show has to have a beginning and a middle and an end. So even if everything happening in between is real, and suddenly you got to put a button on it because you've got a budget. So you've got to say, okay, I know we've been fighting all week about how we're going to plant that row of pumpkins, but we got to resolve it here because that episode's due at the network. It's going on the air in 2 weeks. And from there, it just kind of grew. But the thing that's never going to change about reality television, whether it's, scripted or improv or whatever you want to call it, the people are real. And the people that are on camera, the talent, the on-camera talent, the cast, the people, the subjects, whatever you want to call them, they are real. And that I think is what's at the heart of television today. And, people see themselves reflected in these characters. And it kind of, to me, takes us back to the early days of silent movies when everyone was just kind of making it up as they were going along. And the characters that Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Fatty Arbuckle and Mabel Normand, Mary Pickford, and all those guys played were kind of like who they really were, but just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
They were like they were characters. They were characters, not necessarily caricatures, but they were just a bigger, more interesting. It's life with all the boring stuff taken out. That's what reality TV is. Life with all the boring stuff taken out.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned Fatty Arbuckle. I played him in a play down in Hollywood, Florida. And, of course, I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but one day my ex and I were over at the cemetery near Paramount Studios off of I think Melrose, and buried
Hollywood Forever.
Yeah, and buried in that cemetery is a name that most of the audience will not know, but I'm sure you will know because it directly it works with Fatty Arbuckle, and that's Virginia Rapay. Is buried there.
Virginia Rapay. That was the girl that he supposedly was involved with at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, and it ruined his career.
Yep. And he was never found guilty. They had 3 trials. He was never found guilty. They were all mistrials, and it turned out later that Miss Rapay had a medical procedure performed on her, and it went bad, and that's what she died from. She didn't die from anything to do with Fatty, but the guy who ran the studio, as well as the madam, that was a real shifty person. She kept testifying against Fatty, but Fatty was never found guilty. But yeah, I played Fatty Arbuckle once in a play. It was kind of fun. I was that heavy at one time. I'm no longer that heavy, but I was heavy at that time. Where do some of the ideas that you come up with, where do they come from for reality shows, and who do you run them across to say, hey, does this thing have legs, or am I just dreaming?
No, well, look, I mean, the funny thing about a reality show is, you don't come up with an idea for a reality show. You come up with the people for a reality show. It comes from interesting characters, people with interesting jobs, families with interesting businesses, someone who has an unusual outlook on life. Little people, big world. Matt and Amy Roloff, they happen to be little people, but they lived on a 40-acre farm in Hillsboro, Oregon. And, that Matt was always, building these crazy projects. And Amy was saying, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. And, and then you also had kind of the twins element, real life twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. You had, twins, Zachary and Jeremy, one of them who's average height, and one of them who's a little person, and just watching them grow up and go from middle school to graduating high school. So really all of the elements are there, and they happen to be just a wonderful family with a dynamic relationship. So we got to see these 4 kids grow up on camera, and Matt and Amy's relationship evolved over time, and Matt would build these crazy projects. So really, I mean, I did 189 episodes of that show, and it's still going strong. I was on tonight. Episode 2. Yeah, when I was there from episode 21 to episode 211, and now they're pushing right toward episode 300, I think. So
yeah, they were on tonight.
Yeah, and it's a show that'll be on forever. I mean, people don't realize that, that's probably the longest running, family-based reality show on television, 300 episodes. I mean, name me a scripted show that's ever done 300 episodes. Name me one. You can't. It doesn't exist. Seinfeld didn't do 300 episodes. Little House on the Prairie didn't do 300 episodes. Lou Grant, MASH, none of them. But Little People, Big World has been on for almost 300 episodes. And they were really, after the Osbournes, which was really kind of a yell fest, the roll-offs weren't like that. Little People, Big World's not like that. It's a family-friendly kind of a sitcom format with this family that you want to sit down for a half-hour a week with. Now, think about that for a minute, Gary. How many people in your life do you set aside a half an hour or an hour every single week to make sure you get together and spend time with them?
I don't even do that for myself.
Yes, but America, our whole country, will set aside time every week for a television show about someone they like. And it comes down to, go ahead.
I was telling someone earlier today that a lot of your shows have broken down barriers. Little People, Big World. A lot of people had a misconception about small people, about little people. Your transgender show that you had on a year ago also broke some barriers down and maybe helped open up a few doors and make people think twice about it. There's a lot of reality TV that has broken some barriers that have helped people get over maybe their prejudices or their stigmas towards another person. So I was telling someone that earlier today when they were saying, well, I don't like reality TV. I said, well, maybe not. I don't like all of it either. Never cared for the housewives shows because those are all cellulite jerk housewives anyway, pompous, self-centered, egotistical women who don't deserve a shot at anything in the world. But Little People, Big World broke over some barriers where we started to take a look at Little People a little bit different than we probably do today, as well as some of the other shows you've produced.
Not to pound my own chest, but when you talk about a show like Little People, Big World, which I'm still to this day so proud to be a part of, and we had people that researched this because people forget what a runaway hit. Little People, Big World was a pop cultural phenomenon. They were on the cover of every magazine. They were, everywhere for a while. And the show's still on the air, but like Duck Dynasty was a pop cultural phenomenon. People forget that before there was a Duck Dynasty, there was Little People, Big World. And what we had researchers go back to the very beginning of written literature. And from the 1001 Arabian Nights to Homer's The Iliad to the Bible, there's not a book written, nor a movie made, nor a TV show made in which a little person is portrayed as a normal human being until 2005, a show called Little People, Big World. And, who knows what we were expected to deliver. But what we did is we followed this family to the grocery store. We went to the park. We went camping. And we portrayed them as average, everyday Americans going about their life. And it was the first time in recorded history in the, however many years, I don't know what year the 1001 Arabian Nights were, but I'm told it's prior to the year, 1 AD. Our show was the first time a dwarf had been portrayed as a normal human being. And it wasn't long after that you saw Peter Dinklage, doing amazing work as an actor on screen. And, I forget the young woman that was on the different, lawyer shows.
Right. She was on one of my favorite shows, Boston Legal, for a while.
Absolutely. And it's become very commonplace to see little people, just being who they are. And, it's a show that has had just a major impact on the world. And that would never happen with a film or a scripted television series because it never would have been made. And that's where, reality shows can make a difference, and they can have an impact on an entire subculture of people's lives. Until we did Gator Boys, the first thing that happened when someone saw an alligator was pull out a gun and shoot it, grab a machete and chop it up, run, scream, run for your life. Alligators are going to kill you. And, the truth is alligators, cause far fewer deaths than horses, pigs, mosquitoes, dogs. Dogs kill more people in a month than alligators have killed in the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to, and I'm very proud of Gator Boys for having done that. And, the meaningful shows might not always be the ones that get the headlines, such as the Kardashians or the Vanderpump Rules or the Real Housewives, but we're out there and we have an audience. And, it's entertainment first, but you're also going to learn something from people that make these type of shows and do it well and are good storytellers and have a solid cast of good people. There is something to be learned and something to be gained. It's at the heart of it, it's just good people and good storytelling, and it comes down to that.
We're talking to Eric Streit, writer and author of Reality Shows 101. It should say from A to Z. That's what I say, because it answers all your questions. He's also been a producer in the television industry for reality shows for a very, very long period of time. I told you I was going to ask you this question. What's the most outrageous proposal you ever had for a show?
I'll give you two, and these are proposals of mine. It haven't been proposals that have been pitched. They're shows that I came up with. There's this wonderful twin sisters that were living in West Virginia. They now live in Florida, and they have a competitive baton twirling school, and they're twin sisters, and they also have 10 pet monkeys, and I call this show Monkey Mamas. And I've been developing it for many years, and we keep getting close. And I know that someday these marvelous women are going to have their own show, and it's going to be phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Another pretty outrageous one is we had one a while back that I actually developed with a friend of mine in Florida called Finding Elvis. And, when you look at every week, they're trying to find Bigfoot. And, on the show Finding Bigfoot, and there's a couple of copycats of Finding Bigfoot. And if they ever find Bigfoot, they're going to have to shoot him and bury him, or they're going to have to cancel the show. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, if they can find Bigfoot, why can't we find Elvis? And we lined up some of the foremost Elvis experts in the country. And, and it's like, well, look, if Elvis, Elvis is still alive, and if he is, he's 78 years old, and we got to get out there and find him. And we wanted to investigate all of the Elvis sightings that have happened since Elvis's supposed death in 1977.
Well, I had one of Elvis's closest friends on my show a couple of weeks ago. I know you heard the show with Wink Martindale, and
absolutely.
And I think I saw Elvis not long ago at a Burger King, so he might still be alive. That's one of the amazing questions when you're an entertainer in Vegas, as long as I was. They say, Did you know many Elvis impersonators? I said, oh my God, there's got to be 400 or 500 just in Vegas alone. There's enough of them. What's the percentage? Because I want to start getting to the Donald Trump thing here, because I know you wanted to talk about that a lot. What are the percentages for people who don't know out there of submissions a year that actually make it to a sizzle reel that you get in front of producers that actually somewhere along the line may see the light of day on the air?
My goodness. Well, you got to figure that the competition is fierce. There's probably people in positions like myself. There's probably 200 people who can walk into a room that have the gravitas or the experience or the resume, to sell a reality show on cable television. I'm not talking about Mark Burnett and those big guys that do Survivor. I'm just talking basically run-of-the-mill cable reality show. There's probably a couple of hundred of us. I know on average we get between, 10 and 30 submissions a month. You multiply that by 12, that's 300, 250 to 300 submissions easily in a year's time. So you look at those numbers, multiply that by 200, there's literally 250,000 to 1 million pitches every year for reality shows in Hollywood. And out of those, you have to really narrow it down. I know for me, for every 300 pitches I do, I get a show on the air. 300 to 1 once it gets to my level.
Right.
Yeah. So, you break that down, it really is you know, it's a cliched hackneyed saying now, but it's like capturing lightning in the bottle. What makes a hit show? It's the perfect confluence of circumstances, because the talent might be perfect, the show might be great, the location might be phenomenal, and if a network picks it up and they're getting ready to do it, and you do the pilot, suddenly there's a change at the top of that network, and the whole slate is wiped clean, because now the network has a new mandate, and all of that work that you've done on this pilot is, literally goes right into the garbage.
You state in your book, Reality 101, that it took 5 years from conception to getting it on the air for Little People, Big World. And by the way, where can they get a hold of your book, Reality 101?
It's actually going to be, it's going to be called The Reality Rules. The Reality Rules by Eric Streit, and it should be up on Amazon. If it's not up now, it should be up within the next 2 weeks. Okay. And it's called The Reality Rules, and it should be available at Amazon. My publishing partner has been working to get it up there, and I see it's not there right now, but it should be up within the next week or two. It's very timely. It's a good book. I know you've read it. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it because and I'm telling you, folks, get this book. If you have any inclination to get in show business, whether it's reality TV or some other form of television or entertainment, pick up this book. This is a guide. This is a Bible to tell you of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you should avoid, how you should act when you get there, and how you should treat people, not only for behind the scenes, but in front of the camera, everything from A to Z, soup to nuts. Absolutely. Now, you wanted to get into this, and I do too, because this man is turning out to be a disgusting human being, and I'm referring to Donald Trump. This man is a provocateur in the sense of being a liar and a cheat in so many ways, but he has managed to take his experience on reality TV because he understands the media. He's used it to his advantage to get this far. It looks like Mike Pence is going to be his vice presidential candidate, at least from what I saw tonight. But the only problem with Donald is he goes off script, if there is such a thing for him. He does no filter, and he's a habitual liar. I mean, I can't put it any other way. I know my listeners, some of you out there probably like him, but the truth of the matter is, if you talk to people that do business with him, he's a habitual, sadistic liar and a cheat. He really is. And what really turned me off to this man anyway, I never liked him, was the mere fact that he talked about his military school, that to him, that was like serving 4 years in the military. What a joke. But anyway, getting back to how do I really feel, Eric?
I tell you, as a guy who served 5 years in the military, I'm not thrilled that Mr. Trump, claims that a military school is the same as serving in the military. It's not the same. It's the foundation of his carry it forward, but it's not the same. But what Donald Trump is doing is masterful. When you look, Donald Trump is a disruptor in politics and government in the same way Uber is an interrupter to the taxi business, and Amazon has been an interrupter to the bricks and mortar bookstore business. Donald Trump is playing by a completely different set of rules. He's not even playing by different rules, Gary. He's playing a different game.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton and the 16 other Republican candidates that lost to him, they're all playing chess, and Donald Trump is playing checkers. And the biggest difference is Donald Trump has mastered old media and new media, and he has mastered it. And, politics has always been kind of a closed game, even between Democrats and Republicans. They have the same playbook to a certain degree. The country's broken up into 7 different regions. There are a number of, polling companies that are always the go-to polling companies for media when it comes to politics, for Republicans when it comes to politics, and Democrats when it comes to politics. Donald Trump has not used any of that. What Donald Trump has that nobody in the history of the United States, no politician, no candidate has ever had this, Gary. They have the most sophisticated, amazing demographic information available to anyone on Earth, and it's the Madison Avenue demographic breakdown from 15 seasons of a network reality show that was never out of the top 3. Now, the United States in politics is broken into 7 regions. In television, it's broken down into 210. And Donald Trump, every week, as an executive producer of The Celebrity Apprentice, had access to 210 demographic surveys in 210 different media markets, and he has studied that incessantly. Every week, you get a barcode with a graph that is updated every 6 seconds that will tell you how many people were watching when they changed the channel. Was it a man or a woman holding the remote control? And you can look at these numbers and you can know why someone changed the channel in Des Moines, Iowa, versus why someone changed the channel in Dallas, Texas, Cincinnati, Miami, and Los Angeles. And you can, and as a politician, when Donald Trump seems to be speaking off the top of his head, saying mumbo jumbo and incongruent sentences that make no sense, every one of those things that he says is a very well calculated sentence for each one of those 210 different demographic markets. To me and you, it makes no sense. But the people out there watching that are Donald Trump fans that feel like they know him, they're going to latch on to one of those lines that he says, because one of those lines is market tested over 15 years and speaks directly to the guy in Bozeman, Montana, or speaks directly to the guy in Paducah, Kentucky. And no populist has ever had that ability before, because no populist has ever been armed with that kind of laser-focused, sophisticated demographic information. And, you know, no one has taken him seriously this whole time. Everyone makes the same mistake. They said, oh, Donald Trump's a joke. I said the first day that man announced his candidacy, I said, he's going to be the Republican nomination. He's going to win the Republican nomination, and I'll be really surprised if he doesn't win the White House, because he's playing checkers and everyone else is playing chess. And
we're talking to Eric Streit, the author of Reality Rules 101, and he is also for 20 years been one of the top flight producers in Hollywood of reality TV. Do you think it's too bad he didn't learn, Donald Trump, that is, the issues instead of worrying about the demographics, although they're both important, but he doesn't seem to have a grasp of the issues, and I think that's what's going to really kill him in the long run. Do you think that he's changed the way we run elections now forever?
I think he's changed the way we run elections now for Donald Trump. And you know, when we say that Donald Trump doesn't have a grasp of the issues, I don't know that that's actually true, Gary. I think Donald Trump portrays a man who has a willful ignorance of the issues. But if you go back and study Donald Trump from the late 1970s to today, he has had some very thoughtful, well-thought-out positions. If you read the Playboy interview, if you go back and look at his monthly interviews on the Larry King Show, starting in the early 80s, he has always been an excellent communicator, a thoughtful communicator. And, you know, a lot of people would argue that Donald Trump's ideas and opinions until 4 years ago leaned more heavily on the on the Democrat side than necessarily on the Republican side, or more liberal than conservative. I think Donald Trump is playing a role in order to get elected. And it'll be very interesting to see if he does get elected, will he govern as he campaigned? I think it was President Clinton who said, you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. And Donald Trump could be taking that to a completely unbelievable level, because the stuff if you really look at Trump's history, the stuff he's saying today is not the things he was saying 8 years ago or even 4 years ago.
No, and it's funny, somebody questioned him the other day, which has led to some suspicion that if he gets elected, he may just decline to take the oath and just say, I won the election, I don't care to run the country. There is some speculation.
He'll take office long enough to have the party He'll be there long enough to get his portrait in the presidential hall of portraits. I mean, if you win the presidency, you'll want to have the inauguration. Will he stick around? Who knows? I mean, it could just be the final feather in his cap of a very narcissistic, ego-driven life. I mean, it's interesting. But what's interesting when you think about the history, because as Americans we have a very short history, and you look at the parallels between Donald Trump's grandfather and John F. Kennedy's father. Mm-hmm. They were both they were both kind of ran bordellos and illegal bars during Prohibition. Mm-hmm. There's so many parallels, but Kennedy was appealing to our better angels, and Mr. Trump seems to appeal to our much darker ones, and that's a reflection of the times. People see in a leader themselves reflected back, and some of us are appalled by what he said, and others are enthralled by what he says, and it really is. If Donald Trump is doing one thing, he's doing away with dog whistle and code words in politics. For better or for worse, he's saying bluntly what some politicians have been saying in coded words for decades. And at the end of this, I think, at least from that perspective, he's doing his country a service, whether he realizes it or not. And it's interesting to see him using, basically the same type of tricks and the same type of, negative campaigning on his own party that the Republicans have been doing, to the liberals for, the better part of 30 years. So it's interesting. Mm-hmm. No one else has ever been able to attack Republicans the way Republicans attack others. So I think it's been fascinating from that perspective. My God, he brought Jeb Bush to his knees just by saying low energy, Jeb Bush, low energy. He branded him in a way that no one else on the planet could have. The man is a master of media. A Donald Trump presidency scares me tremendously, but at the same time, it is like a reality show. You're like, well, what the hell will happen if I push this button?
Well, he reminds me of a petulant child when he doesn't get his own way, because friends of mine who work in real estate in New York say that his tactics that he's been using on the campaign trail is what he's been using for years in New York. If he thinks you double cross him, he's almost like the mob to a certain extent. If he thinks you double crossed him, he will put your name out in the press and really rake you through the coals. If the Hillary Clinton campaign called you tomorrow and said, Eric, what do we need to do to combat this man? And with the experience you have in reality TV, what advice would you give him?
Brand him. You have to brand him. And I think the Democrats are making a serious mistake by calling him Dangerous Donald, because when you call him Dangerous Donald, his obvious response, and he hasn't said it yet, but he will, is like, well, of course someone's dangerous if you're a bunch of cowards and losers and you're afraid of your own shadow. You would call me dangerous. And it's a very, you could wear that moniker with pride. Donald Trump could be proud of being dangerous. He lives on the edge. He's not afraid to make decisions. That's the wrong name to give Donald Trump. If I were the Hillary Clinton campaign, if I were any of her surrogates, I would be going for Dumb Donald.
Yeah.
You can't fight against Dumb Donald. Dumb Donald. How do you... first of all, it's more than that. Anyone over the age of 40 that ever watched Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids knows there's a certain image in their head of what Dumb Donald is and who Dumb Donald is. But Dumb Donald, it's got alliteration. It's catchy. It's Dumb Donald. Hey, Dumb Donald. Sounds so good. And, Crooked Hillary, for better or for worse, it's stuck. You got Slick Willie and Crooked Hillary. And, just like low energy Jeb Bush and Lion Ted, Donald Trump is masterful at branding his enemies or his opponents. And she needs to brand him as Dumb Donald. To just do that, because you know what? He's thin-skinned enough that he would go around, what's he going to say? He goes, and he's already said, he's like, I'm a smart guy. I've got a very good brain. You can't, the minute you have to defend yourself against the nickname Dumb Donald, you're being thrown off your game. You're being thrown off your message. And if they can make it stick, they'll win. Now, I think that the problem with being a leader of such long standing is you do kind of live in a bubble. You do kind of follow a different set of rules. You don't get out there very often. You don't meet the people from Paducah anywhere but a rope line. Who's going to tell her that? There's a certain sense of decorum at high levels of government that I think people disdain, that we don't respect, that we think it's, phony or crass is the wrong word, but it's phony. It's, it's putting on airs, whatever you want to call it. And Donald Trump cuts through that and says, crooked Hillary, lying Ted. And, if you don't give some of that back, if you don't defend against it, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And I think brand him dumb Donald. If I were MSNBC, if I were left-wing columnists and opinion makers, I would be saying dumb Donald, dumb Donald, dumb Donald, dumb Donald, and then follow it up with the dumbest thing here's the dumb Donald daily report.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I would be doing.
Yep. We're talking to Eric Streit, the author of Reality Rules 101. He's also been a producer in Hollywood for over 20 years on a variety of reality TV shows. Let's get back to your book here, Reality Rules 101. What type of people make great reality show participants?
The thing about what makes a great reality participant is it could be anybody. It could be you. It could be your mother. It could be your neighbors next door, your ex-wife down the street, your mayor, your chief of police, the guy down at the, if you've got an interesting group of guys where you get your oil changed. Anybody could be the next big reality star. That's why I love reality television. You never know where the next big star is going to come from. We all knew that guy and that girl in high school that you just, you don't know what set them apart, but you had to watch them. You had to look at them. They were the ones everyone talked about. It might have been the class clown. It might have been the quarterback or the head cheerleader or the smartest guy with with the glasses with the tape on him that was so smart and you knew that he was going to go to MIT. But it's those people that have that strong personality and that strong character. They're memorable people. And you can think of probably half a dozen people in your life that you say, man, that guy or that girl, that they were a character. And that person is kind of your anchor. The big personality, whether it's because of their athleticism or their hijinks or their intellect or their inventiveness or their con artistry or their insanity, but it's that big personality. And then the people that they surround themselves with, the wife, the kids, the best friend, the coworker, the business partner, all of those people, you find them, the sidekick. It's really the archetypes. It goes back to Commedia dell'arte. Classic storytelling goes back to Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. And it's really the same thing. I look at every reality show as Gilligan's Island. You got, these seven, broad characters and you never know who's going to be the strongest, but, some in an ensemble cast, someone will always emerge as the leader. Someone will always emerge as the comedy relief. Someone will always emerge as the loyal sidekick, the love interest, the newbie, the mentor. All of those characters that have been around for so long in any group setting, those characters exist. So, there's no shortage of where they come from. Everybody's got a shot. I mean, when Andy Warhol said that in the future everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes, he was talking about reality television.
Yeah. That's chapter 2 of your book, Everybody's Got a Shot.
Everybody's got a shot.
Let's talk about the development of a reality show. Let's something I know you wanted to talk about. And, of course, we're talking to Eric Streit. He's the author of Reality Rules 101. He's also been and I didn't say this at the top of the program, but Eric and I have been friends for quite a while. We have a mutual friend, and Eric has promised to put me on a reality show. I don't know what kind of a bizarre nightmare that would be, but a one shot, just one line. That's all I want in a reality show.
It'll happen.
If it will happen. If it has strippers and alcohol in it, I'll be there.
I will endeavor to make that happen for you, Gary.
All right, let's talk about development of a reality show. For people out there that are not familiar with what it takes to develop a TV show to begin with, as I said earlier, it took 5 years for you to get Little People, Big World on the air. So let's talk about that process.
Well, let's talk about that process. Now, let me be real clear about that. I didn't develop Little People, Big World. I came in after the fact, but the people that did develop it just never gave up. They appeared as part of an ensemble cast on a CBS special that didn't get picked up, and then the production company, when CBS didn't pick up the show, they went and did their own shooting with the Roloff family. And then 5 years later, a pilot got picked up. And another 18 months to 2 years after that, the series got picked up. So really, 5 years to a pilot, six to 7 years to the series. And it was a pop cultural phenomenon that was, one of the top reality shows for 5 years. And it's still on the air today. And it took 5 years to get to a pilot. And there's this misconception that if you've got a video camera and you do a few crazy things like the guys on Jackass, well, you ought to be able to lock down a deal in 2 or 3 weeks. But the truth is, it rarely happens faster than 2 years. And that's the fast track. Because you have to look at, one show is a small cog in a wheel of a network. And a network has 24 hours of programming a day to fill. And usually those networks have an overarching theme or an idea or a mission. So you have to find what network this show belongs to. You've got to convince someone at that network to give you a shot. Then you have to make sure that you've got the right people in place that can deliver a great pilot. And then you've got to make sure, and there's no way to predict this. It has to fall into place. Once you've made the pilot, there's got to be space in that network schedule to place it so people will see it and like it, so it has a chance of getting picked up and actually becoming a hit series.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of all of the things that go into making a hit show that are out of the control of any individual, it literally is lightning in a bottle.
Right.
So you think about what has to happen. You got to have the right cast and do a sizzle reel. You got a sizzle reel. You got to get it into the hands of the right production company or showrunner that can go and pitch this as an idea. Then you've got to make sure that of all the companies you pitch it to, the company that wants to go with you has the contact and the ability to get it into the different networks, and that relationship is strong enough that they say, we believe in your production company, and if you believe in this unknown entity in East Wetumpka, Alabama, and think it'll make a hit show, we're going to give you $350,000 to develop that and do a pilot. And then you've got to marshal the forces and find a good director, find someone who will be able to figure out the right format and formula and way to best utilize this particular cast. And then you've got to get the right camera guy and the right crew, and you got to have a week where it's not going to rain and ruin production. And then when the pilot's done, you got to have the right editor who understands the type of music that will make these people pop. People don't realize, man, music is one of the keys to a good reality show. It can make or break it. And I tell you, the beauty of Little People, Big World, the family, the Roloff family, top-notch, amazing family. We also had Emmy-nominated Joey Newman, who's the nephew of Randy Newman. He composed every episode for the first 210 episodes, individually composed every episode of Little People, Big World. And we did get an Emmy nomination. The only Emmy we ever got nominated for was Joey Newman for his original compositions for Little People, Big World. And it gave the show so much more depth than it otherwise would have had. And the thing is, you almost never notice the music, because good music, you don't notice it. You almost don't notice it. You think, what the hell, there's music in Little People, Big World? Yeah, watch it. Most reality shows have music. Some music is really bad and over the top, That's because you have an editor who doesn't understand good music. So you make this marvelous pilot. You're proud of it. I've got one right now that I literally am delivering tomorrow to a network. And, it's really one of the best shows I've ever done. I'm so proud of this show. Can't say much about it because it's not aired yet. But it's a beautiful show. I'm very proud of it. Two of the most talented guys I've ever worked with in my career. But now that all of those steps happened, and we have this magnificent pilot, and now it's got an air on a night that people will watch it. We deliver it. It goes to the network this Friday. We have the window of opportunity for this show that I'm so proud of to be a hit. We have 15 days. You know why?
No.
Because on August 5th, the Olympics happens.
Uh-huh.
And no one's going to watch anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think people pay that much attention to the Olympics so much anymore as they used to.
Well, it makes a huge impact on cable numbers, believe it or not. It's a huge impact. And it's really hard to, if you have a pilot airing during the Olympics, you better be looking for your next gig.
Yeah,
so I'm in a position right now where there's nothing I've made a great show. Super talented guys, best company I've ever worked with. And, I'm delivering, the pilot delivers on Friday. My wife and my in-laws were all going to Italy on Monday. And when I come back in 2 weeks, I'll know if I've got a job or not. And if I don't, I'm going to have to scramble and find another gig.
You talk about in your book, and we've got about 10, 15 minutes left here because I'm going to run over folks because of what happened at the beginning of the show. But you talk about Chapter 3. I want to include Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 together, and then I want to talk about money because that's what a lot of people are dazzled by. But you talk about no free rides and nothing.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're going to have your own show, you got to keep one thing in mind. It's an old cliche. There's no free rides, man. If you get a chance to have your own TV show, you are given the opportunity to become a star, and that comes with all the trappings of success that the word star implies. But you better play well with others, and because if you can't follow directions, if you can't listen to the people that know what they're doing, the people that are making the show, you will very quickly find the rug pulled out from under you, because in reality, you're a star with a small s. People say that, Congress is the most exclusive club in America because there's 435 congressmen and 100 senators, but I would argue that there's even fewer reality stars than there are senators and congressmen. So if you become a reality star, you're in a more exclusive club than the United States Congress. And as little respect as reality star gets, it's funny, I'd rather be a reality star than a congressman, because a reality star has to work harder, and a reality star actually has to answer to their constituents. That's the audience, the network, and the production company. And one mistake, because, look, the people that end up being reality stars, they are, they're A-type personalities. They tend to be control freaks. They're at the top of whatever field they're in. And a lot of times when it comes to reality stars, because I'm like I like to joke that I'm very top of the very bottom of the barrel when it comes to television, because, reality is not respected. We don't make the money that the big shows do. But, I am at the top of the bottom of the barrel as far as executive producers in the reality world go. Just because I'm like one of the top reality producers doesn't mean I could come and do a radio show, or I could come and be a brain surgeon or a car salesman, or, be a great alligator wrestler or a blacksmith. I do not have a mastery of those professions. I have a mastery of television. I know how to make a television show. I've been doing it for a long time. But a lot of times, people think because they're, the top alligator trapper in their state, that they are qualified to have an opinion on how to produce a reality television show. And that's just not the case. And if a reality star becomes more trouble than he's worth, the show will just go away, because life's too short to deal with a bunch of jackasses.
Yeah.
If you know, and look, we have to, we're under contract. If we get a contract and we got to do 20 episodes, I'll do what it takes to make those 20 episodes, and I'll make it a hit show. I'll do everything I can with me and my team and the team I'm given and the cast I'm working with. We will make a great show. But if you're a pain in the butt, you will never see me again, and I don't leave a paper trail. Good luck to the next guy trying to figure out what it is that made the show a hit.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like Colonel Sanders' Secret Herbs and Spices, man. Every good reality show producer brings a little unknown something to the table that nobody else can duplicate. Yeah. And I'm not saying that just about myself, all of us. There's a little bit of alchemy.
Before I get to the salary, before I get to the salary part of all this, I want to talk about people that are a pain in the butt.
Well, I mean, you know, look, I mean, you know, people are, you know, some people are specifically cast because they're a pain in the butt. And I try and have a very, you know, when you're put on a reality show, you're there to basically be yourself in every situation you're put into. You're going to be yourself when you're working with your friends, when you're in front of your family. You know, you're going to be yourself no matter how uncomfortable you are with having half a dozen people following you around with cameras and microphones and lights. You just have to be yourself. But if being yourself means being a pain in the ass, and I don't know if I can even say that on your show, I apologize.
No,
but be a pain to your family that you're on camera with. Be a pain to your coworkers that you're on the show with. Do not be a pain to the producers and the camera guys and the audio guys that are working to make you a star. Because if you're a pain, look, the guy carrying around the 40-pound audio rig on his chest 12 hours a day is working a lot harder than the guy standing there, you know, doing what he does every day anyway, just living his life. And the same is true with the camera guy carrying a big, heavy rig, walking backwards while the star is walking forward, you know, bumping into telephone poles or tripping over curbs or, you know, fire hydrants or tree stumps or whatever. And, you know, if you're a pain, we're going to smile and we're going to tell you how great you are and how much we love you. But we will, you know, continuity is so important in this business. And if you're a pain, you're not going to attract the best and brightest to your show. We're going to go and we're going to find a different show where the people are not a pain. So, you know, it's just important to be a good person, to be respectful, to not be a jerk, to listen to the people that know what they're doing. You know, I am not I know nothing about investments. I know nothing about stock portfolios. I would never presume to tell my business manager how to run my business affairs because I cop to it. I have no idea. So if I were making a reality show about him, I wouldn't expect him to tell me how to craft a scene or what music cue to choose to build tension. But some of these guys lose their minds and after 6 episodes think that they should be the executive producer, the writer, and director. And I've seen it sink more than one show. And it's unfortunate because, you know, just because the show is great doesn't mean you're worth the trouble.
Well, we're talking to Eric Streit, the author of Reality Rules 101. Eric, let's talk about the aspect of I hope you can hear me. I'm hearing a terrible echo.
I hear you great, man. I can hear you very well.
Let's talk about the salary aspect of the money. People have a misconception that they're going to make a ton of money doing these shows, and that's not true.
No, it's not true. I mean, the truth about reality television is, you know, chances are if you're in any city other than Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, or Miami, you're going to make more money than you're used to making in your normal life. But, you know, a reality show is a gamble. A network is putting up, you know, typically no less than $1 million on a roll of the dice and a maybe. And, you know, a reality show star, depending on the network and depending on how big that network is, depending on the size of the budget, the star of a reality show can make anywhere in its first season between $1,000 and $5,000 an episode. And that doesn't sound like much. You know, 6 episodes of TV can be between $6,000 and $30,000. And that doesn't seem like very much. But, you know, when you amortize, when you think of, well, you know, for a guy like me, one time on Little People, Big World, we made 7 episodes in 9 days. And, this was in season 3 when they were getting considerably more than $5,000 an episode. But, the numbers add up. You can't look at it as a career move in the first 2 or 3 seasons. You have to look at it as like a bonus or a part-time job, even though it's actually a full-time job. Where money comes from in a reality show is your brand. All a reality show is, Gary, is a commercial for your brand. On Gator Boys, these guys were at the Gulf Coast Gator Ranch in the Everglades Holiday Park, and I don't know the numbers because it's none of my business, but I know they made a lot more money on hats and T-shirt sales than they did from their salary of doing the television show. The money, if you've got 10,000 people coming to see you a day, and half of those people buy hats and the other half buy a T-shirt, you're going to make more in one day selling hats and T-shirts, and you're going to make in 10 episodes of Little People Big World, or 10 episodes of Gator Boys. That's just math 101. So, unless the show becomes a huge hit, you're not going to get, $100,000 an episode or $50,000 an episode or even $25,000 an episode. The numbers aren't there. The reason reality television exists is because it's a less costly program to fill up a 24-hour production, a 24-hour network clock. And so you're not making Tom Cruise money. You're not making William Shatner money. You're not making NCIS money. You're making, you're making, if your show is a hit, you're making in the low 6 figures from a season, from a series, from a season of your show once the show's a hit. In the first two seasons, in the first 40 episodes, you're lucky you're making $5,000 an episode. You do the math. It's not big money, but what happens once the show's on the air, if your show is successful and you find your audience, the money is going to come from public speaking engagements, motivational speaking, hats, T-shirts, your book, keychains, stuffed animals, whatever it is that your brand is all about, whatever it is that you're the expert on, you are going to have a platform to exploit that, and people are going to, it gives you basically a voice and a megaphone for your voice, I should say, just like radio does. And you're going to get to, sell your ideas and sell your project to a product to a much wider audience than you would, if your woodworking shop in Mayfield, Kentucky, if you're making tables or chairs, and you have a wood shop in Mayfield, you might get 25 or 30 orders a year for your high-end tech. But the minute you have a TV show, you're going to be backed up with orders for the next 2 to 3 years. And that's a fact. And I'm so proud of my History Channel show, Iron and Fire, one of the most beautiful shows I've ever had the good fortune to produce. And, a young man who's a blacksmith in Romance, Arkansas, and a great guy, a wonderful guy, marvelous family. And the show it was a 12-hour run, or 12-episode run, or kind of a mini-series in the reality terms, if you will. We don't call them mini-series, but it was a 12-episode run. Took us from beginning to end, and that's what it was intended to do, and that's what it did. And it had a marvelous happy ending with his family, getting a cabin and his wife having their second child. And, and I know that in talking to him, he's, the show reached a very wide audience, and now he's got his business, he's going to be selling, rifles and guns for the next 2 to 3 years based on his current orders. And that's magnificent. Yeah. And then that's the best a reality show is going to do for you. It's going to increase your brand and build your business.
Well, we've been talking to Eric Streit, the author of Reality Rules 101. Eric, thank you very much for joining us here on The Express, and thank you for taking an hour out of your life.
What a pleasure, Gary. Thank you so much. I look forward to doing this again and maybe talking politics again in the not-too-distant future. That was fun.
All right, sir. Good night now.
Talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks.
All right. And that's it for tonight. We want to remind you, if you want to catch a hold of me on Facebook, you go to Gary Allen, ALAN. You can also go to youtube.com, catch any of my past shows, Gary Allen, The Express interviews. The show will repeat itself at 7 p.m. on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, as well as progressivevoices.com. And don't forget tunein.com with tmvcafe.com. Until next week, folks, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.